Welcome to my corridor. I'm just spreading the muse. I've been doing a weekly webisode series on Sundays at 11 a.m. Mountain Time called Change Your Stars. How to navigate your intuitive gifts to live your life's purpose. Because we all have intuitive gifts. It's just some of us were taught differently and put them in a hidden little treasure box. But today I want to muse about the Trinity, or my three go-tos, which are actually virtues: peace, joy, and happiness. Then I always throw in integrity. And if you know anything about numbers or astrology or the mystic oracle kind of thing, divinations, whether again it's tarot cards, oracles, divinations, integrity comes from the number 11. It's the sign of Virgo. It's our sixth house in astrology. It's the planet Chiron, where we are in need of healing our past life wounds, which the definition of integrity is the quality of being honest, along with having strong moral principles. It's a state of being, whether it's whole or undivided. So our world appears to have some integrity issues at the current moment. In other words, there's in relation to integrity, honesty, character, morals, ethics, unity, etc. You get the idea. So in life, I would think, or maybe I believe, happiness, joy, etc. are ultimately what we came down to planet Earth school to delve into. For centuries, even in the dark ages, which I believe we're coming out of, we've been seeking our own personal happiness, contentment, joy, peace, etc. And just maybe we all just want to align with the greater universe along with sacred geometry. And I really feel like all these correlate in a higher vibrational way, or a system, a sound system, or a soul system. And I sense that we all have a gift or a natural talent that is unique to each and one of us, kind of like our thumbprint. But we often get consumed with somebody else's gift, and our translation gets lost. So just combining all the mystical ideas or muses or otherworldly sacred geometry, shamanism is kind of a huge thing as well. You know, people, I read a lot of things about medicine people. Sorry, lost my mind. But it's really a cosmic galactic corridor, just being holistically aware every day to transform our stars, tuning into the daily frequency, which actually really is a thing. So I'm also going to do a little snippet as a reflector, watching the gates of the moon as it flows through my human design chart for 30 days of a lunar cycle. I haven't kind of put this together yet, but it should be cosmically interesting, to say the least. But today I want to share some insights into our boundaries. I've done an entire year in my podcast series called Musing with Tonya D. This season I actually coined Subtle Energy Season, but ironically, I talked about different levels of boundaries within our system that we need to explore. So be sure to register for Changing Your Stars. I've been talking about the cosmology of numerology, and I'm doing a part 2 this Sunday. So again, join me Sunday for Change Your Stars. It's just navigating your intuitive gifts to live your life's purpose. So numbers play an intuitive cosmic role. And in the current moment, we're actually in the sign of Sagittarius. I kind of mused about beliefs last week on my show because that is Sagittarius, where each belief comes to the forefront. And we have the planets in this cosmic soup bowl that are all playing their role in these characters called life. And we all have these planets and houses, and they're all magical. We have these seasons and elements, and just different energies come into play. But depending on your rising sign, that tells when, and your natal tells where, and your solar tells what. So you need to be curious and do your own investigation. But I want to share insight into boundaries, the secret code to the all things mostly, or the nothing as well. So it's an all or nothing. And boundaries are usually a hidden sequence, and we don't often even think about them because they're hidden, right? They're kind of alluring in their own magical way because nobody thinks about creating them. Boundaries should really literally come first. It's an energy that's an all or nothing. It's either not anywhere present or it's everything possible. Literally an all or nothing. It's a protective time and space. It's a conscious awareness in our old soul garden that manages our space and time. And in astrology, it's the planet Pluto, which is currently in Capricorn. So we're not giving time and space to the corruptness, the tower falling down in government. It's kind of curious and disturbing all at the same time. It's also the energy of Scorpio. It's our 8th house. So wherever that's playing out in your soul garden, it comes to life. So this is the sign and the energy that defines what energy is literally a boundary. It creates the boundaries. It's the limits of where spirit energy can go in the story of creation in this universe. So boundaries are number uno, or the unseen. Even in the Bible, it talks about being darkness and then there is light. So my thing is, you can't have darkness without light because you don't know it's dark, and you can't have lightness without dark because you don't know there's, I mean, it's the yin and the yang, the aspects. And that's just the nature of literally a boundary. Absolute nothingness to absolute 100%ness, if you will. So a boundary literally represents a sacred circle of eternity energy going on forever, everything and anything and nothing all at the same time. It's the power of defining who we are or what we are, and absolutely what we are not. So we can understand what we absolutely are. But the truth is, every body on earth is every cosmic reality there is, every state of awareness. It's just how it plays out in our cosmic soup, or the ingredients that create who we are. So we decide at one point from our heart space that we love one aspect than another. So that's why we come into this lifetime at any given time to be born into a season, a sign, etc. And I even look at the seasons and the elements the same way, from the earth plane and the cosmos, and then who we are, because we're vibrating in between all these frequencies all the time. So whether we pay attention to our boundaries or not, whether we use them or not, or whatever that looks like for you, it's inside of every one of us, like it or not. And I believe to be an enlightened person on planet Earth, which is the point of this galactic corridor processing for humans right now. So when we become aware of each of these aspects within our soul garden, our space, our circus, the ingredient, the cosmic soup, and we create this conscious part of who we are, and we get in the flow, in the direction. But what's really kind of fascinating about consciousness and humans, it's all about being self-aware of every aspect of who we are within and outside of us. Mostly inside of us, because there's different states of conscious awareness. And each of these states actually rules its own history within us. It's just self-aware magic. In other words, if you think about consciousness for itself, your mind can go running off on a tangent, and your body will literally tell you it has a pain without you consciously asking it. Those are telltale signs that we really don't frequent or pay attention to, right? We kind of put them on the back burner, but those are states of awareness and feelings, just how we respond. So energetically, we all are an aspect of the greater universe, the source, the oneness field, which has kind of been curious for me with the oneness field and what's all that's going on. Because if you're in the oneness field, why are you not being your spark within your own state of conscious awareness? Kind of makes me wonder about the oneness field and how many people are literally in it and not really tooting the horn of what's happening on a conscious state of awareness. But energetically, we need to bring all of these states of awareness to the one center, and that one center is actually our heart space. So I look at all of these not just working out in the cosmology and the numerology, but also within the chakras, the meridians, and the auras, and how they play out in the cosmic consciousness field. So it's kind of this ingredients of this cosmic soup bowl. That's really what I call it. But it's just important to know that everything revolves around our heart space, our own inner queendom, our round table, if you will, where we all rule our own queendom and our own reality. And we all hold a round table. And for me, I have a round table, a queendom, where we're part of the round table, and every person has a purpose within the round table. And it's just knowing what somebody's talent is so they can explore that for them. And that's kind of where people's lights shine. It's just knowing what you're good at and allowing the person to go at it 110% and beyond, and knowing, it's trust. So that goes back to boundaries. So all of these characters in our queendom literally play a role. But the heart of who we are, the heart of you and who you are, is really your heart. It's number uno. It's the aspect within ourselves. It's our heart is our queen inside of us. And our queen must be what everything is literally checked again. It's like having the conversation with our heart to ignite our inner spark. So you need to unite all of our heart space and all of our queendom with the intentions of our heart space. And this is kind of where we bounce out, like whatever the heart says, right? And as you get to know the inner characters or these ingredients inside of yourself, and you get to know your cosmic soup, just who you're naturally born to be, you'll know exactly how to direct your entire energetic being into create the life that you want to become within your own queendom. So boundaries within your queendom are your executioner. They're the agent that will kill something off. You can kind of see it in a queendom. You know, it's the guy with the hood on, the big sword ready to chop off the head. Kind of the first season of Game of Thrones, really, right? Which I totally missed. But that's our boundary energy. It's the energy of Scorpio inside of us. And we all have this energy inside of us. It's the part that's just willing to kill off the problem. It's the part that none of us really want to kill off, but especially, you know, as you climb the ladder of spirit, the higher you get, the less you want to kill anything off. It's just a fact, right? So this is where our boundaries kind of get kind of complicated. And you, as you elevate in life and you become more sophisticated on earth, I'm kind of thinking of a guru when they just kind of sit in their skin. But if you think about your boundaries, the head chopper inside of you, as soon as you have that warrior nun on your side, as soon as that old guard is killing off all those bad guys, or as soon as that Excalibur is standing next to the inner queendom, boy, don't you feel powerful? I know I do. But that's the power of boundary making. So when you make a boundary, you draw that executioner's line, you come into your soul power, into your soul garden. And most of us usually feel out of power because we're out of touch with the consciousness of our boundaries. We literally have no idea what our limits are, right? So we have no idea where our guardian is, but I do. And there's a crime running all over our queendom. So if you understand the energy of a Scorpio, boundaries are very present within a Scorpio. It's like a Scorpio, it turns to death, right? It just does that. It's the boundary within them, and they mean it. They're the executioner. You will feel the wall come up. You'll feel yourself just literally shut off at the same time. Maybe when you're standing next to a loyal Scorpio standing next to you. I know this myself because I have a Scorpio moon, and my boundaries when it comes to my emotions, I'm either all or nothing, and I will literally slice you off and not think back just by the snap of a finger. But this is where you feel like 100 or a million or 1,000 tons of boundaries behind that one just bubbling all around you. And that's how the energy of a Scorpio feels. They feel they can either kill you or make you into something amazing. Nothing in between. It's an all or nothing energy. So the true power of nothingness or the power of boundaries is really the ability to just take an eraser head and erase that consciousness, or even multiply it into more time-space dimensions. So it turns out that you can't have one without the other, without the circle. It's literally a circle. A circle represents this unlimited consciousness of life. The circle represents the boundary. I play with circles all the time. It's just something that you put around something that creates sacred geometry in a way. Even in my buttercup meditation, I start out with a boundary. And the cool thing about a boundary and a circle, you know, you kind of think about a fire. Fire, you know, you have a boundary around it, usually stones. But energetically, through your third eye, you could create a wall of trees to create a boundary. You could use fire, you know, all intuitively. Because as human consciousness, we build to understand just this simple boundary principle. If we have a boundary, things are valuable. People honestly don't respect free stuff. Anything free, they really don't want it because they didn't have to cross the boundary to get it. Such as maybe you had to pay for it, maybe you had to do something for it, or they're qualify for it. So if there's not any kind of boundary, we literally just assume that whatever it is on the other side of the coin, it's not really worth anything, but actually it's worth everything. And even if you think about it, the taller the fence you build around your house, or the more your house is worth with the boundary around it. So that's literally why expensive subdivisions, big gates, big fountains, all this glamour kind of puts this idea in human consciousness that just says, oh, there's a big boundary between me and that quality of life. or that way of living. So that must be worth a lot. It must be expensive. But so that's actually a nothing. Actually, it's the secret that adds the true value to anything and nothing all at the same time. So if there aren't walls around what you're creating, if it's not sacred to you, it's not actually going to go anywhere. But what's curious is a boundary is literally a placeholder. So we hold a boundary for a placeholder. So the idea of a boundary is the part of our aspect of consciousness that we kind of put, we see it as invisible, that we can't comprehend because it's not seen today, but maybe it'll be seen tomorrow. So it's this part of us that manages space and time on Earth. And that's really kind of what this energy manages. It rules space and time. So you have to ask yourself, do you have the time? Do you have the space? And this is actually the first step that you have to ask to create anything in God universe. Because if you don't have the time, then you don't have the space. And if it's not protected, you're really not going to manifest, create, or love it, and so much more. So energy can literally not build up to something bigger and greater. It's those little baby steps. And sometimes we forget the baby steps that got us from A to B. So we lose the baby steps because we martyred the boundary. So if our boundaries held back, one thing about the energy in God's universe is it always spreads out into itself. So anything in the universe is seeking equality. It wants to bounce. So boundaries are what prevents corruption from happening. And it also is what prevents, like buzzards from getting in, bad energy, parasites, just sucking out your life energy, taking your soul away. Then we try to build up into something great. Boundaries are executioner, Excalibur, the old guard, just making sure our queendom is totally safe, or our queen, because I am a queen, and I don't want anyone to mess with my inner queendom. So if you want to if you want to manifest anything in your life and not have it messed with, the very first thing to do is create time and space for what you want to create in your queendom. And this isn't just space and time, it's protected space and time. And that just means that there's no phone calls, no text messaging, no YouTubing, no scrolling. Other people's thoughts literally can come into the equation. And if you can't hold some space and time, some sacred space and time for what you want to correct or create, it all becomes corrupted. How does this happen? Well, I'm here to tell you. If you believe in somebody else's thought that they threw at you, you corrupt, your tower falls down. I've had this happen multiple times in my life where you eventually just fall in time and space. So you need to protect and fortify what you want to create. What conditions are going to be necessary for your creation to grow? What could corrupt your project? What could get in the way of you creating the life you want to live? What are your backup plans if something falls apart or goes wrong? So if you don't think through and awaken to these conscious aspects that are part of you, what the guardian will do if something goes wrong, then your queendom becomes unstable. It gets shooken apart. And it's also being susceptible to the parasites, the dark energies, the entities. All of this will likely fall over and under your own weight, just simply because you haven't thought through as you started to climb into your skin. So if you haven't shored up your borders, you won't feel safe enough to go for the gold. So this is probably the most boring, maybe the least interesting actually, aspects to take, which is to think through all of these things that could go wrong, and have a backup plan or a mechanism to safety just to create that all these things don't fall down. But the curious thing about boundaries, it's an all or nothing kind of energy. So if a person is completely ignorant to protecting themselves, they're likely doing all their protecting of other people. Curious stuff, right? Most of the time, if not 100% to 99. But I find that people are out in the world trying to protect other people of what they need to protect in their own life. They're doing it for others, but they're actually not doing it for themselves. So our soul is always protecting something. But the question is, are you protecting your own heart, your own village, your own personal manifestations first before you reach out and try to protect someone, or literally reach out to somebody, right? There's that phone call, reach out and touch someone. So you have to kind of follow a few things through, and protecting somebody else wouldn't even begin to happen until later in your soul story. So, by the way, that's just how this flows. But that's just another kind of conversation that we could have. But there are 3 levels to protection, actually, in this cosmic stew of ingredients. There's different focus of what protection even looks like. So, to keep it kind of simple, you just need to learn to protect from oneself. Anytime you have an energy out of protection, you're learning to protect yourself from yourself. In other words, you have cases where you get your mind, it's going off way too far, or your feelings are going off too far, or maybe your ego is stamping out on your heart's love of something or another person. But that's the next level. So the first level of Excalibur is to make sure that its own members of your Queen's Round Table isn't having fighting or battling within itself. That one part of our queendom isn't attacking another part. For me, it would be my smart ass thoughts or somebody else's thoughts coming at me, my mind. So I literally have to shore up my borders and my boundaries when I'm around people, especially negative people. And sometimes you have to work and people are just assholes, right? You can't get away from them. So it's important to shore up those boundaries. And our thoughts, usually, our mind quite often goes way too far to disrupt the serenity within ourselves. So, in boundaries and looking at our own manifestations, what your law of attracting, you have to ask yourself, what in myself needs to be more protected within myself? What in myself will ruin this or that for me, or get in the way of what I want to create? So, we need to make boundaries. In other words, create those inner laws and draw the line. Maybe say to ourselves, okay, self, this right here has to stop for the good of my inner spirit, right? Inside my heart. So the next level of boundaries, and I'm just kind of putting it in the ingredients for you to muse about actually, is if you're not protecting the integrity of yourself when you're with others. So in other words, this is where you have to put up boundaries to make sure other people don't get in the way of your projects or what you want to manifest, to just make sure you don't lose yourself, right? So maybe you're in this great relationship and one of your friends is kind of jealous about that. So they kind of create this cosmic soup and they get in the way of your relationship because they want you to lose yourself or not lose yourself within that other person. So to make sure you don't lose yourself to other people, that's a whole nother conversation of boundaries, not to get lost and get off your own path, your own purpose. Because this is where a boundary that says, I've got to stop this now. I've got to do things that I want to do. I'd love to help you right now, but I kind of want to go on my own way. But that's kind of a whole nother frequency or level. And then the next level to a boundary actually deals with our emotions. We have to protect our feelings in situations. And that's because it's the master of frequency of our own feelings that get affected by the feelings of others. So you're trying to keep the integrity of your own feelings kind of in the flow and they're mashing together. But that's a whole nother animal, as we all know, to just kind of locking the door. It's one thing to lock the door, and it's another thing to lock the door and still feel great about it at the same time. So that's a higher dimensional barometer. So as you can see, boundaries cross all of these dimensions, just preserving yourself in the concert of others, preserving your feelings in the concert of the masses, just this global earth. Now, I believe in spirituality and I also believe in modern wizardry. What? Yeah, so in other words, our consciousness creates our reality. So if you don't take time or give things time and space in your own consciousness to protect who you are in your village, you create realities where you're not protected. So in that case, you'll draw in the corruption. Isn't that great? So a lot of people who are constantly attacked by others, it's because they don't think ahead of time for their own personal limits and their boundaries. So they literally law of attract into their village. And this really isn't a fun thing to do, right? So you basically love attract other people's hooded dark angel from other than them who also have boundary issues. And then their boundary issues start crossing these cosmic lines instead of protecting themselves. So it's basically one side or the other of that same coin. So if you want to play along, the first thing you need to do is take that hidden aspect needed inside of yourself, create sacred space and time, and believe me, everybody knows when you're lying to yourself or you're cheating. Your soul even knows when you're lying to yourself, right? You just can't do it. But that's the weird thing about consciousness. It literally knows. It's so aware. So be sure to take time and space to protect. Plan your space and time for you to protect. And even if you show up at that time and space and do absolutely nothing, you actually created the potential for everything to be in that placeholder. So you need to ask yourself how much time something's going to take or does it need. Give it space. How much space does it need? So this is kind of the foundation of your soul system. Thanks for tuning in today and listening to my muse. Subscribe to my musings on YouTube, my podcasts. Join me Sundays for my Change Your Stars webisode series. Ashe, and I'll see you on the other side. Blessings to you.